Hello, Jordan Sheridan live, Status Coup. Hope everybody's having a good week. It is Friday, May 26, 2023, right here in the United Corporations of America, as we've been doing the last, as we've been doing, goodness, hold on. Oh, there we go. Why am I hearing myself still? Hold on. 1 second. I'm still hearing myself.
Make sure you don't have like the YouTube window open somewhere on your desktop.
I don't hear you now. There it is. Hold on. All right, I'm hearing myself, but I'll keep going. 1 second. Very weird. I'm hearing myself, but I don't know where it's coming from. But I'm going to keep going. So, lot to get to. Obviously, we've been covering East Palestine extensively. We've been covering Kalamazoo extensively. Hold on. I got to figure this out because it's driving me crazy. I had no idea where this is coming from, Colin. 1 2 1 2.
Do you have a second window that's in StreamYard?
And I don't hear you either.
Oh.
Turn here.
Uh-oh.
1 second.
One moment, guys. Just
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. All right. I don't hear an echo anymore. All right. That was fun. So welcome. Smash that like button. Share the live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this very well-produced broadcast. I don't know what that was about. We're live a little bit early, like we've been doing the last couple Fridays, where I go live early, take your phone calls, and then a little bit later at 5 o'clock Eastern, Tina will be live. So I'm looking forward to her show again, 5 o'clock Eastern time. But we're going to go all over the place today. We are going to go through our latest East Palestine story. This one about the EPA's continued, shall we say, less than believable claims on the East Palestine detonation. Lewis and I have both been digging in the background. We're kind of at the stage in our reporting that we think it's pretty clear that there's a big smoking gun, but not a lot of people want to talk. A lot of people involved in the derailment / controlled burn, which our previous story earlier in the week exposed was about as controlled as I am 4 whiskeys in. It was an open burn. We showed that that's not true, that it was an open burn, which is against EPA regulations. But we believe we have an even bigger part of the story. So we're working on that. Can't give you, an exact day when that will be out because we're trying to confirm some things. So stay tuned for that. But I did a follow-up piece yesterday on our Substack, which you should all be signed up for. So we'll go through that. Also, the 2024 race, even though the Democratic Party and the DNC want to basically cancel any type of primary and just anoint Biden, politically dead or alive, as the Democratic nominee. Polling is showing, whether I like it or not, because I'm no fan of RFK Jr., to be honest, polling is showing that RFK is on the rise. So we're going to get into that. Obviously, you had the Ron disaster this week, where he announced with a 20-minute tech disaster on Twitter Spaces, which I'm still kind of baffled who advised him to do that. So we'll get into that and whatever else. And we're going to take your calls. So smash the like button, share this live stream. Quick update for our end of the month goal, because our goal for May originally was 100 paid members, which we passed a couple days ago. So we said, hey, we still got time left. Let's boost the goal to 125. Let's boost the goal to 125 paid members. Shout out, by the way, somebody signed up before I went live. So shout out to new Status Coup member. Hold on. Melissa signed up right before we went live. So we're at 104 members. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks for signing up. Hey, 104, 125, 21 members to go to hit 125 members gained for the month of May. There is a scenario in June where we could have Tina down at Cop City covering another week of action against Cop City in Atlanta, and have Lewis in East Palestine at the same time. That would be the first time in Status Coup history. We have two reporters on the ground at the same time with the ability to go live from two locations on the same trip, because we just purchased a brand new live view, which was $15,000. However, if we're going to afford two different trips, we're going to need to keep growing our paid membership. So if you can sign up today, I'll push it as we go, statuscoup.com/join. But let's start, before we get to 2024, I want to go through the story that we published yesterday on our Substack, which if you're not signed up to our Substack, definitely sign up. That's statuscoup.substack.com, which is free. You can sign up for free on our Substack. Also smash the like button so we can get this out to more people. Obviously, when I'm live a little bit earlier, people are still at work, etc. So not as big of an audience, but hopefully we can get this. Did I hear that Jordan is having a whiskey? No, I have not. My rule is nothing before 4 o'clock Eastern. I think 4 o'clock Eastern is acceptable. So let's start. This is on our Substack. The link is in the description. Ex-EPA administrator doubts the agency's East Palestine claims. Hard to believe that they were silent before Norfolk Southern detonated toxic vinyl chloride. So that is the headline of the story I published yesterday on our Substack. And this is ex-EPA regional administrator. They should have spoken up. Her name is Judith Enck, and she was the administrator for Region 2, which is in New York, New Jersey, and some other parts of the Northeast. So kind of important, because this is a former, basically not the federal administrator, but one. EPA has, I think, 6 regions. So this is one of the region's former administrators basically saying, yeah, I'm not buying when the EPA says we weren't consulted. I'm not even going to call it the controlled burn anymore. We weren't consulted on the open burn. I'll read a little bit of it. As the EPA backtracks away from months of parroting Norfolk Southern's claims of having performed a, quote, controlled burn of 5 cars of toxic vinyl chloride in East Palestine, now refusing to answer our questions on whether the railroad company actually initiated a banned open burn detonation, there's growing doubt regarding the agency's claims that it wasn't consulted before the detonation on February 6th. Quote, I find it hard to believe that they were silent, Judith Enck, former EPA administrator for Region 2, told us. Enck, who bluntly stated that the detonation was an open burn with no pollution controls, as Status Coup previously reported, the EPA banned open burn detonations in 1980 due to the risks posed to human health and the environment. Enck called the open burn over East Palestine unprecedented and criticized the EPA for not doing more to stop it. If the EPA was in the room when the decision was made, they should have spoken up. She noted that Status Coup had the first documentation of the EPA acknowledging that the original plan, 2 days after the derailment, was to, quote, vent and burn one car of vinyl chloride. But according to EPA official Mark Durno, the agency learned on Monday, February 6th, quote, we learned they made the decision to vent and burn 5 cars. By all indications, the they Durno was referring to was Norfolk Southern, a potentially incriminating discrepancy considering CEO of Norfolk Southern, Alan Shaw, testified to the U.S. Senate that it was the local fire chief, Keith Drabak, who made the ultimate decision to perform the so-called control burn. And the clip below, we're not going to play it because we played it before, was Durno basically explaining that when they came in on Sunday, the plan was to burn, quote, 1 car of vinyl chloride. By the way, vinyl chloride, highly toxic gas linked with rare forms of liver cancer, lung cancer, reproductive issues in women, neurological issues. It is, unfortunately, a quick ticket to cancer, high exposure to vinyl chloride. So in that clip, Mark Durno was saying the original plan was 1 car. They were going to, quote, vent and burn 1 car of vinyl chloride, which, by the way, has never been done in American history. And then all of a sudden, by Monday, they decided to add 4 more cars of vinyl chloride to the detonation list. That's what Lewis and I are looking into, kind of that process from Friday's derailment to the, quote, vent and burn on Monday, because that vent and burn created a chemical shower of vinyl chloride, dioxin, I believe phosgene, which was used in World War I as a chemical agent, a strangulation agent. It has been banned in the Geneva Convention and warfare. Phosgene has been banned because it is such a lethal chemical. So as we go, when the EPA was repeatedly asked by Status Coup about its apparent contradiction, still referring to the process as a controlled burn, claiming it wasn't consulted on, but then refusing to answer whether it was, in fact, a prohibited open burn, the agency didn't answer. ENC isn't the only former or current environmental or emergency official to question the decision to vent and burn 5 cars of vinyl chloride. Like I said, a highly toxic gas linked to higher rates of liver and lung cancer, along with liver disease, miscarriage, and neurological problems. Let's play this clip. This is the Beaver County director. Beaver County's in Pennsylvania, right on the border of East Palestine and Ohio. This is the Beaver County Emergency Management Director testifying, I believe, at a actually, I think it was before the Senate, describing his impressions of the decision to go from venting and burning 1 car to adding 4 extra cars, totaling 5.
The boots on the ground crews were great to work with. It seems as bosses or management gets there, that's where the communication failures start. And that's probably why we're here today. The decision to go from the 1 tank car to the 5 was jaw-dropping. And that impact, just because of the impact it had. Since then, they did seem to get better.
So let me explain that. This is in front of the Senate, government official, emergency management director. When he says it was jaw-dropping to, on Sunday, the decision is we're going to vent and burn 1 car. And by the way, vent and burn means they're going to create a ditch. They're going to light a spark in the ditch and explode the cars with the chemicals. That, even the 1 car, that had never been done before of these kind of chemicals. He's saying jaw-dropping to add an extra 4 cars to that under the claim that if we don't, there's going to be uncontrolled explosion. What proof did they provide that there was going to be an uncontrolled explosion? Not much. You see where I'm getting at? Was it really necessary to vent and burn any of these cars? Let's play the other clip, Colin. This is of the director of the Pennsylvania Emergency, basically Pennsylvania's FEMA. You know, FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This is the head of the Pennsylvania FEMA, PEMA, they call it. And this is him at the first hearing the first hearing in Pennsylvania on February 23rd, talking about the decision. This is Randy Padfield talking about the decision to vent and burn 5 cars and what the Pennsylvania authorities felt about that when they were told this decision from Ohio EPA, from Norfolk Southern.
And this is a very unique situation because we went from the talking about venting and burning 1 car that probably had about 50% contents in it to venting and burning all 5 cars within a very short period of time, in a very time compressed and a very, I should say, non-discretionary time environment where we were forced into that kind of backed into that tactic, I should say. And I'm not saying that is not the tactic of choice, but they were not able to articulate any other courses of action that were thought through at that point in time. And we were trying to understand like what changed overnight that was driving that tactic that morning when they were briefing Governor DeWine.
So people might wonder, Jordan, what are you getting at here? Because all this is very technical. Controlled burn, first open burn, vent and burn. You're confusing me with all these terms. What are you getting at here, Jordan? Well, an open burn, which basically means detonating highly, highly toxic chemicals without any pollution controls, therefore poisoning a whole community, launching a chemical shower, a mushroom cloud over East Palestine. That plume went west to other parts of Ohio, east to Pennsylvania. I spoke with people who said it went to West Virginia, went to parts of New York, possibly even Canada. Okay. So what he's saying, and key phrases here, and that's again, the head of Pennsylvania's FEMA. By the way, smash that like button. Super chats are welcome. We got to get some new member signups too. So we got a lot of stuff to do. Obviously the audience isn't as big as we'd like. Early, maybe I'll try to go a little bit later on Fridays. I don't want to go too close to 5 o'clock because Tina's going to be live at 5 o'clock Eastern. But maybe we'll figure out a way where I could go live a little bit later. But what's so interesting about this is he's saying, again, this is Pennsylvania, so they were not the lead because this happened in Ohio. He's saying a unique situation. You hear this term? This is government officials. Like they don't want to say they're lying. They don't want to say there was no reason for them to do this. They don't want to say they fucked up royally. Unique situation. These are called diplomatic terms by politicians. He's saying the cars probably only had 50% of the chemicals left before they did this vent and burn. Another key phrase. He's saying Norfolk Southern was not able to articulate to Pennsylvania Emergency Management, to the Pennsylvania Environmental Department, to the Pennsylvania governor. What other alternatives did you guys look into other than detonating 5 cars of toxic gas linked to cancer? And that's important because according to the EPA regulations against open burning, which we broke a story a couple days ago, Lewis and I, that this was an open burn and that the EPA will not answer us on the record. They cited legal reasons why they cannot answer us whether this was an open burn. But according to the EPA's own regulations dating back to 1980, you can't do an open burn detonation unless rare situation, unless you have exhausted all other safe alternatives, meaning you have evaluated alternatives that are safer, you have reevaluated those alternatives, and you have concluded based on, evaluation that there is no safer alternative. He's saying here they couldn't articulate any other option they took. Now, why would they not look into other alternatives that might be safer? Would those other alternatives that might be safer perhaps take a little bit longer? Would those other alternatives that perhaps would be safer keep the rail track closed for longer? Would those safer alternatives that might keep the track closed a little bit longer cost them a shit ton of money? Would Norfolk Southern stand to lose a conservative estimate based on that route, which is an important route going from west to east and east to west through the Midwest. What could they stand to lose? Conservatively speaking, $1 million a day. Yeah. So safer doesn't mean quicker. Safer might mean longer. Longer means we live in the United Corporations of America and we're not willing to lose a fucking cent. So if we have to sacrifice these poor people in East Palestine. Now, to be clear, this is just a theory. But right here, you have the head of Pennsylvania's FEMA saying, yeah, we pushed back. We asked what changed overnight. That's his words. What changed overnight? From on Sunday, we only need to vent and burn one car of vinyl chloride because Norfolk Southern was saying there was risk of that car having an uncontrolled explosion. What changed to Monday? Oh, we gotta burn all of them. Four others. And hey, what other options have you looked into that might be a little safer, less risky? They couldn't articulate. But this is another key clip. And Colin, I asked you to clip this morning if you have it. This is from that same first hearing in February. And by the way, for the idiot in the live chat the other day who said, Jordan, thank you for coming to work. You only work 3 days a week. I've been going through a 5-hour hearing all week and transcribing it based on, because we're working on an investigative story. So don't tell me I'm not working. I'm going through a 5-hour hearing and now I have another hearing after that I have to listen to and transcribe. But this is, I think he's with the environmental department. But listen to what he says about whether this was a controlled burn, if you have that, Colin.
From the initial train derailment, and we knew that there was 5 cars of vinyl chloride involved, that was what we started the modeling on. So we were always looking at the possibility of 5 vinyl chloride cars, either, as the term is called, controlled burn, which isn't, they don't burn under control, it's we control when they burn. That's the only control we have. Whether they would do it on themselves or when we choose to do it. So all the modeling was based on 5 cars. And as Director Padfield was saying, the difference in the conversion factor wasn't just one individual's opinion. He came in, saw what it was, decided that he didn't trust it, went back and verified with the manufacturers. They also got on the phone with the Interagency for Modeling and Atmospheric Assessment Center. I don't know who mentioned alphabet soup, but that adds right to it.
So to be clear, and this was in February, just weeks after all this happened, he's saying they don't burn under control. That's the only control we have. Meaning, once we detonate this, there's no control. This is not burning under control. The control is when we do it. So to be clear, there is no such thing as a controlled burn. It is literally gaslighting. Like gases, they're exploding, gaslighting the people of East Palestine and Pennsylvania who were poisoned. You can't detonate all these chemicals and then when they combust, they turn into other chemical byproducts and then say, oh, it's under control. Of course not. And by the way, Lewis and I have been talking to residents this week. I'm being told residents are getting sicker. Residents are getting sicker. I'm trying to get interviews with some of them, but not every person wants to come on air who is sick and share their sicknesses. But I am being told that there are residents that are now having seizures, that this is all new. They were not having seizures before. I have been told that there are residents who have had strokes since the derailment. Devil's advocates could say, Jordan, well, you can't definitively prove that it's linked. Well, I mean, I'm being told these are people in their 30s and 40s who did not have any history of seizures or strokes. It's a little bit early to be having seizures and strokes, wouldn't you say? I mean, I'm 36. You would probably think it's odd if I had a stroke or a seizure. And I'm trying to get interviews with those folks, but understandably, not everybody wants to put their illnesses out there. But I'm being told residents are getting sicker. So this is, in the case of Flint, residents got sicker over the course of years because heavy metal poisoning, it takes several years for it to really get to its full peak in terms of the carnage it could do in your body. But if you're dealing with vinyl chloride, dioxins, God knows what else was in the air, I believe phosgene, which again was banned after World War I because it was used as a strangulation agent. Phosphine is against the Geneva Convention to use in war, modern day. Colin, come on for a second. So you live in the heartland, Colin, not the heartland. You live in Texas, where no stranger to polluting the fuck out of you, oil, fracking, you know, they'll combust anything. When this guy's saying, and I quote, they don't burn under control. The only control we have is when we burn it. Doesn't this all sound like kind of marketing slogans like control burn? And really what they did was just fucking nuked all these chemicals over this small village that was right next to Pennsylvania. Am I wrong to think this probably went much further and that's why they didn't want to test for dioxins in the first place? They want to sweep this under the rug as soon as possible because the damage is probably much, much, much worse than they have let on.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when they name bills like the Patriot Act or the Freedom for Everyone Act and stuff. It's just like, it has nothing to do with the title, really. It's just trying to get people to be like, oh, that's for freedom. Like, control burn in your head. You're like, okay, they have full control over it. There's nothing to really worry about. Like, just that you would assume that. Not just, oh, they just control when it burns. That's not what comes to mind. And just the absolute plume of cloud. Like, no one looks at that and thinks, oh, that was, man, they controlled that really well. Even if that was
honestly,
an actual term.
I'm a little mad at myself because I wish I found some of these clips before we published the story the other day on the open burn, because right here they're saying it. This guy is saying, yeah, no, that's just semantics. This was not controlled. You have the head of Pennsylvania's FEMA saying, yeah, Norfolk Southern couldn't even explain to us if they even looked into any safer alternatives. I think it is very clear, and this is frowned upon in journalism. Don't speculate unless you have hardcore facts. We are investigating, so this is speculation for now. But if Norfolk Southern can't explain if they even looked into all the other alternatives, that means they didn't want to look into other alternatives because they wanted to open this fucking track as soon as humanly possible, even if that meant having to fucking guide those trains over dead bodies in East Palestine. Sorry to be so crass. That is a crime against humanity. That's why we're continuing to cover it, because we are hearing from residents that I have no reason to believe are exaggerating at all, that they are getting sicker. Now residents are having strokes. We are also looking into the death count, because from what I have been told also, there have been more people dying in the last 3 months in East Palestine, relatively, like not the elderly necessarily. So we want to get that data and compare it probably to the 5 years before COVID, because obviously you would have an increase in deaths during COVID here. So you'd want to compare it to before COVID. But it's just crazy. It's crazy to me that we're not talking 3 years ago. We're talking almost 4 months ago that they detonated these trains. Frankly, the EPA, if you followed earlier in the week, will not answer me on the record, will not answer us on the record if this was actually an open burn. They said we cannot legally answer that. I was told by a source that's in the know about the EPA's response to all this, everybody is lawyering up right now, meaning the lawsuits are dropping soon, including the EPA. And here the people of East Palestine are just begging for basics. They're begging for paid relocation if they want to relocate permanently, for Norfolk Southern or the government, pay off their mortgage, pay off the difference because their house value has gone dramatically down, and help them move. How about some Medicare for all these residents, because they're going to need it, kids and adults. How about decades of testing if they choose to stay there? Independent testing, not just of the environment, the soil, the air, the water, but people's blood and urine. And then once they get the test results, healthcare paid for by the government or frankly, Norfolk Southern. Either way. But the media, mostly, aside from us and a few others, kind of moving on. It's really outrageous. And one last time, if you came to this late, the story we have up on Substack, and the description is the link to the Substack. I'll put it in the super chat here, but it's also in our description. The link, Substack, you could join for free, by the way. Former EPA Administrator Judith Enck, was the head of Region 2. She said straight up to Status Coup, I find it hard to believe that the EPA was silent. Because remember, the EPA, all of a sudden, now that they're trying to backtrack, is claiming we weren't consulted by Norfolk Southern or anybody else before they did the, quote, controlled burn. Which then when I asked them, can you tell me whether this was an open burn against your regulations? We can't answer. Okay, but you just said it was a controlled burn that you weren't consulted on, but now you won't stand by that because you won't answer whether it was actually an open burn. And to be clear, open burn banned since 1980. Only way you could do it is if there's no other alternatives. The head of PEMA is saying that they didn't even look into other alternatives. Is anyone going to go to jail for this? Anybody going to go to prison? I digress. So please, as a reminder, our goal for this month was to gain 100 paid members. We passed that a couple days ago. So I said, you know what? Still got a couple more days. Let's raise the stakes here. Let's try to get 125 paid members. We're now at 104. I know it's not easy for everybody. For those that can't afford $5 to $10 a month to support our on-the-ground and investigative reporting, totally understand. But if you can, if you got $5 to $10 a month, we are right now in the position where, because we just purchased the brand new Live View, which I've been telling you about, that cost us $15,000, which is making me nauseous. Now we could go live in 2 places at once. So we might, depending on everybody's availability, be able to send Tina back to Cop City next month. There is another week of action against Cop City. The protests against Cop City are heating up. I can't say for sure, but it would not surprise me if you have, since the weather's getting nicer, it would not surprise me if you have, I don't want to say a standing rock. It would not surprise me if you see a lot more activists heading down to protest in the woods there this summer against Cop City, which is not only about a police compound, a militarized police compound. It's terrible for the environment. It's racist. They're dumping this fucking militarized police compound right on a black neighborhood. So we want to send Tina back to Cop City in Atlanta in June. At that same period, the week of action, which I think is in late June, there will be the NTSB hearings, National Transportation Board. They'll be having their investigative hearings in East Palestine at the same time. So technically, we could have Tina down in Atlanta and Lewis in East Palestine. And I got some plans myself for the summer in terms of on-the-ground reporting. But to pay for 2 trips at the same time, we gotta grow this membership. It's the only way. So if you can sign up, statuscoup.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. $5 to $10 a month. If you sign up while we're live, I'll definitely shout you out. So before we take your calls, I just wanted to go through 2024 real quick. I'll give you my thoughts, and then we'll take your calls. Listen, straight up, I'm not an RFK fan, but politically, I have to cover if he's rising, and he is rising. Let's play the first clip.
And there you see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at 16%. Inside this poll, a couple of other interesting things. The Biden job approval. If you look at the breakdown, women, voters under 45, Hispanic voters, black voters, where the job approval is overall. The condition of the economy, excellent or good, 33% for Democrats, only fair, poor. And you see the breakdown by party. It's time to check in on what these polls may be telling us right now. With me tonight, Kellyanne Conway, former senior counselor to President Trump, and Doug Schoen, former advisor to President Bill Clinton and longtime political consultant. Great to see both of you.
Good to see you.
Doug, when you look at those numbers, do you see worry?
I see profound worry. And the reason I say that is the approval is getting perilously close to 40% or even high 30s, which is almost very, very difficult to get reelected with those numbers. the economy, the top issue, his ratings are decidedly negative. And in the primary, only 62% are voting for him against two effectively non-serious candidates. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr., based on his name, his message, and alienation from the incumbent, could get as much as 30%, which would be calamitous for the incumbent.
So that's one poll that has RFK at 16%. There's others that have him at 20%. Let's play this other clip.
All right, tonight, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going away. The controversial candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination, and he is polling at 20% in our latest CNN poll. 20% against a sitting Democratic president, Joe Biden. By the way, this is the second poll showing this in a month. Keep in mind, in the 2020 election, Democrats only needed 5% in 4 qualifying polls to participate in debates. Now, Kennedy is not meeting that threshold. He is obviously trouncing it. Kennedy was, of course, once best known for his environmental activism and his family name. But now he's gained a lot of attention, a lot, for his anti-vaccine stance, a stance that is supported by some on the right and apparently some maybe on the left. And, of course, his spread of other types of misinformation. So I want to bring in Harry Anton, our numbers expert. Harry, let's just talk about this from the actual number itself. 20% is a big number, okay? And I think what stands out about it is not just that it is big, it is that it is consistent and it is not an outlier.
It's not an outlier, right? So our CNN poll had Kennedy at 20%. We've had 2 Fox polls out in the last month. One had him at 16%. The other one had him at 19%. And so we're seeing this very consistent sort of range of Kennedy, somewhere between 15 and 20%. And all those polls generally have Joe Biden in the low 60s. So Biden is clearly ahead. But the fact is, Kennedy is putting up a far more impressive showing than I would have thought when he first entered the race.
Right. And I guess the real question is, if this is consistent, who are these people? Who is the base for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Yeah, the base can be best described as people who don't self-identify as Democrats, those who self-identify as independents, and those who are not liberal, those who are moderate or conservative. In fact, if you look at our CNN poll and you look at the primary support among moderate or conservative independents, look at that. Biden is ahead, but just by 6 points. Look how close that race is. And this kind of makes some sense to me over who some of the people who are backing Kennedy are, like someone like a Jack Dorsey, right, the former head of Twitter.
Right.
He was somebody who supported Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, and those are the types of people who I think are sort of congealing behind the Kennedy candidate.
And who knows whether they'll stay there or the point, but I guess what you're saying, some of these individuals may be people who they just don't want to vote for Trump, but they like some of the other things, maybe the vaccine skepticism or other controversial items.
I would call them anti-establishment. That is what I would call them, right? They're people who don't necessarily identify as Republicans. They're more on the left side of the ring, but they're anti-establishment and they do not like Joe Biden. That's the best way I might put it.
All right. Traditional Democrats, though, Kennedy seems to be a non-starter, despite the name.
Right, exactly right. Look at the view that quote-unquote strong Democrats have of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Look at this. Just 27% favorable, 50% unfavorable. Kennedy is a non-starter among traditional Democrats. It's really those in the middle who self-identify as conservative or moderate and not Democrats where his support lies.
Right. Well, it's fascinating because when it comes to a broader election, right, depends where you can vote as in a primary, but obviously independents are the biggest identified group in the country. All right, Harry, thank you.
So he's basically in polling anywhere from 15 to 20%. Which is pretty impressive and more concerning that Biden, is basically at 60% for an incumbent Democratic president who they're claiming has done all this historic stuff, which if you watch us, he's done virtually nothing. He's done virtually nothing that he ran on. $15 minimum wage, abandoned that real quick. Public option, abandoned that real quick. Said he wasn't going to drill on public lands. Totally abandoned that. Go down the list. $2,000 checks. He's moving further and further to the right. This debt ceiling bullshit, which he should have said from day one. I'm not negotiating on the debt ceiling. I'll invoke the 14th Amendment because it says in the Constitution our debt should not be in question. If they want to sue and crush the economy, it's on them. That's what he should have done. But with that said, listen, I'm not going to lie here. I don't think RFK is going to become the Democratic nominee. for a lot of reasons. We should add Marianne Williamson in these polls is polling anywhere, I'd say, from 7 to 8% to some polls have had her as high as 11 to 12%. That's not nothing. Bernie Sanders, when he started out in 2015, I mean, he was polling at 4 or 5%. There have been fluctuations too, where RFK dipped back to Marianne, and they were both at 11%. So I wouldn't say, totally forget Marianne Williamson, but I don't think either of them have a great chance at beating Biden, not because Biden's so great, but because you already see what's going on. The DNC has openly said we're rigging it. We will not have debates. We will not have a primary. The media is openly rigging it. I'm not a fan of RFK for reasons I'm going to lay out now. But bottom line, if he's hovering between 15 and 20%, which could go up, he deserves to be on the debate stage. He deserves to be given a primary. I don't want to say given. He deserves to make his case to the American people. Marianne Williamson, based on her polling, belongs on the debate stage also. I don't think she is running the campaign that I think needs to be run, which we could get into. But let's start with RFK. Besides the vaccine stuff, which I'll get to, because to me, that's the deal breaker. Besides the vaccine stuff, I think a lot of people are kind of jumping on to RFK just because maybe the vaccine stuff, maybe they look at, oh, he's been good on the environment, which he has been good on the environment for sure. I'll give him that. But it's ironic to me because these are the same people. A lot of these people, I will never vote for another Democrat again. If you even entertain voting for a Democrat, you're a sellout. But RFK jumps in to the Democratic primary. We love RFK. You gotta love their intellectual consistency, right? And I'm not hating on it. I thought it was stupid in the first place. I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. I voted for Green Party before in other races. I'm not a vote blue no matter who person, but I'm also not stupid enough to say I will never vote for someone, even if there's someone that I'm impressed with or I believe in or I think will actually get in there and fight if they have a D next to the name. I think that is stupid. It's pushed by people who know nothing about politics. It's pushed by people that, frankly, get a lot of clicks off of just being absolutists and nihilists, but don't actually have a plan to seize power. So I'm not saying don't entertain RFK because he's running as a Democrat. I just find it ironic that a lot of these Jimmy Dore types who, burn it down, we will never vote for a Democrat. A lot of his followers and a lot of followers of his mini-me channels that like to suck him off to get clicks, they're on the RFK train. So very interesting. But besides the vaccine stuff, RFK is pretty establishment and has a history of being pretty establishment. So it's weird to me that all of a sudden leftists like RFK, who's not just his last name, but is pretty establishment. Here's a clip from 2009, him criticizing the Obama administration. Let's play it.
And we have this White House up there now that's claiming, we're a White House of values, but to me, it seems that all of the values that they claim to embrace are just these hollow Hollywood facades that mask the one value that they really consider worth fighting for, and that's corporate profit-taking. They say that they like free markets, but they despise free markets. There is no stronger advocate for free market capitalism than myself. The best thing that can happen to the environment is if we had true free market capitalism in this country, because the free market encourages efficiency. And efficiency means the elimination of waste, and pollution is waste. You show me a polluter, I'll show you a subsidy. I'll show you a fat cat using political clout to escape the discipline of the free market and force the public to pay his production costs.
There is no stronger advocate for a free market capitalism than I. Yeah, well, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that. And if you say, well, Jordan, that was from 2009, he's basically saying the same shit now. Colin, if you have that tweet I sent you too, he's saying we don't have fair market capitalism. We have corporate crony capitalism where the rules are written by billionaires and incumbents and large corporations to stack the deck against the middle class. Government should create rules that make Americans able to do well for themselves by doing good by each other, instead of forcing Americans to do well by poisoning each other and hurting each other and privatizing the commons. I believe in as little government as possible, but we need government there to be on the side of the little guy rather than on the side of Wall Street and big corporations. You know what this sounds like to me? You know what this sounds like to me? Colin, I'd love your thoughts. This sounds a lot to me like Elizabeth Warren with a much more prestigious last name. I'm not a socialist. I'm a capitalist, but I believe in fair capitalism, Elizabeth Warren said. I believe in a true free market. I believe in a regulated market. I believe in a regulated market where super PACs don't own the country, even though at the last minute I took a super PAC's $14 million, speaking as Elizabeth Warren. But RFK
I'm a capitalist
is
to my bones.
right. That's what Elizabeth Warren said. So RFK is basically, I believe in free market capitalism. By the way, we've never actually had a free market in this country. Definitely not for black and brown people. Definitely not for Native Americans. And mostly for rich white people. Hey, sorry. I am equating Warren with RFK. So listen up. So he's saying we just need to get rid of crony capitalism, and he's equating crony capitalism with like the EPA, all these special interests getting subsidies. That's basically what he's saying is we give out subsidies, we rig the market, all these agencies are run by lobbyists, et cetera, et cetera. He's right about all that. But it sounds to me, unless I'm misunderstanding it, sounds to me he's basically saying what Warren was saying. It's we could regulate our way out of this. We need real regulations. We need to enforce our laws. We need to get the crony capitalism out. We need to remove the subsidies for big oil and chemical companies and Monsanto and all that. I'm with you. But that's like 40, 50% of it, RFK. The problem is until you get money out of politics, period. Until you have a public financing system, period. Until you get rid of lobbyists and make it illegal. By the way, Ron DeSantis, we're going to get to, his campaign is openly asking for lobbyists to give it money now. Mr. Populist down in Florida. I mean, you could be get rid of the subsidies, this and that. But no, there's no such thing as a true free market. It's not a thing. It's never been a thing. And the fact that he seems to have this fetish for the days of like free market capitalism, it's just talk and words. Listen, economically, would it be better than Biden? Sure. Has he done good things on the environment? Yes, he has. It's not all bad. But this fetishizing of we just need a fair market and we need a free market and we need true competition. This was Elizabeth Warren. But here's the problem with all that. Colin, come back. Sorry, I should have told you I'd be enlisting your brain today. The problem is, okay, but what is that going to do? How is that going to erase the corruption? Look at East Palestine. Look at Kalamazoo. Look at Flint. We have had 40 years of a controlled demolition of the middle class of this country because we have offshored all the manufacturing to China and Mexico. No disrespect to those countries. They deserve jobs, just not child slave labor, so that American corporations could pay nothing to wages. But you basically have corporations are allowed to do whatever the hell they want in this country because cities like Kalamazoo, East Palestine, Flint, Detroit, you name it, are deathly afraid to regulate corporations. They are deathly afraid to punish corporations. They are deathly afraid to prevent them from poisoning their own citizens, because if they actually do regulate, if they actually do govern, those companies are just going to flee. Oh, you want to regulate us? Oh, you want to give us serious fines? Oh, you want to threaten us with criminal penalties for poisoning our citizens? Yeah, we're just going to shut down and go elsewhere. So what's RFK going to do about that? That is the 40-year controlled demolition and exodus of American manufacturing of the middle class that workers built. And doesn't sound to me like RFK has a plan for that. Bernie talked about that. To a lesser extent, Trump talked about that, even though he's full of shit. But RFK is basically talking about trimming around the edges and let's just get rid of the subsidies to Monsanto and chemical companies. And well, what are you going to do about EPA heads, basically, chemical lobbyists coming in and becoming chiefs of the EPA, or ambassadors being chemical lobbyists? Well, you're gonna outlaw that? I don't know. It just sounds to me like very much like Elizabeth Warren not trying to spook the normie Democrats by being like, I'm a socialist, and saying I'm just a responsible capitalist. But I hear no plan to actually revive American industry. I hear no plan to attack corruption in this country. I have no plan to get rid of money in politics. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's it's that thing of, like you said, with Elizabeth Warren saying that and everything, is similar thing of these people who are like, we're ardent capitalists and we're just against what the end result of capitalism is, which is what we're in now. Like, this isn't some weird, anomaly in it. This is what is always going to be the end result. And so it's a very like showmanship thing, because both him and Elizabeth Warren will get these great anti-establishment sound bites and everything, and then as soon as they get in, they'll just be able to ride that line because they're like, well, we're capitalists and everything. We're just against the bad part of capitalism, which is
right. And by the way,
yeah.
He's already said, I mean, in the interview with Crystal Ball, that everybody got their panties in a twist. I don't know why. I think she barely laid a glove on him, frankly. But he basically said, yeah, I theoretically believe in universal health care, but, it's not pragmatic. What the hell is the difference between that and Hillary Clinton saying, this will never, ever come to pass? And, when she was waving her hands around, I was there at that rally in Iowa in 2016. Which, Medicare for all will never, ever come to pass. That's just a more kind of muted way of saying, yeah, I like it on principle, but I'm not actually going to do anything to fight for it. But these leftists are all getting pom-poms out for this champion of free market capitalism. Give me a fucking break. They like him because he's an anti-vaxxer, and they have, whether it's Jimmy, who is just openly and cravenly pandered to the right to get that anti-vax lane and has been very profitable for him, or a lot of his followers that I think have been hoodwinked into buying this bullshit. But I think they're ignoring this kind of, frankly, establishment stuff. They're ignoring that for the anti-vax and, what he's saying on Ukraine. And by the way, wait a minute. So you're so anti-war, yet you were pushing Hillary Clinton as president twice? He was a major booster of Hillary Clinton twice. How is it that you're against kind of crony capitalism? How is it that you're anti-war, but you were boosting Hillary Clinton in 2016 and 2008 and 2016? I don't know. Make that make sense to me, because I don't know many actually anti-war people that would be for Hillary Clinton. And I also don't know many people against crony capitalism and special interests that would be for Hillary Clinton as opposed to, let's say, Bernie Sanders. And if you don't believe me, we got the tweets. Broken clock is right twice a day. Michael Tracy had a good tweet thread. He pointed out, has anyone ever endorsed Hillary Clinton more consecutive times than RFK Jr.? So I think this is him endorsing Hillary Clinton. Senate campaign. So that would be in 2000. This is 2008. He was on the campaign trail for Hillary Clinton for her first presidential campaign. Plans to stump for Hillary in New Jersey. And then again in 2016. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's a crime if somebody supported Hillary Clinton, but I don't know many true leftists who would consider that person anti-establishment, anti-war. Yeah, I don't know about that. The other and we haven't even gotten to the vaccine stuff, by the way. I'm going to get to that. But also, for all these, lockdown, we're the lockdown left, even though, by the way, we never actually had a lockdown. I keep having to say this because I actually lived in New York City during the beginning of the pandemic. There was no lockdown. People who tell you there was a lockdown are either intentionally lying or delusional. I lived in New York City. People were out. People were in the park. People were running. People were walking. People were congregating in Central Park. The subways were still running for a long time, even at the worst of the pandemic. Italy had an actual lockdown, like you couldn't leave your apartment. There were European countries that had an actual lockdown. We did not. But you know, it's like Ron DeSantis kind of like reinventing his COVID policy, because Ron DeSantis was for the vaccine in the beginning. Then when he thought it was politically expedient, then he was anti-vaccine. But I mean, Trump will attack him. He was pro-vaccine, Ron DeSantis, in the beginning. But look at this tweet, because it sounds like RFK was pro-lockdown in the beginning. Anyway, looking forward to the evidence of RFK's brave opposition to lockdowns in March, April, May of 2020. You know, when the stay-at-home orders were actually still in effect. And Michael Tracy is referencing this tweet by RFK, March 30th, 2020. Coronavirus lockdown hasn't just slowed COVID-19, it reduced lethal air pollution and associated mortality. When lockdown lifts, risks of status quo will return and could worsen as governments weaken environmental regulations and pour billions into polluting industries. I don't know. That sounds pretty pro-lockdown to me. And by the way, I'm not knocking him for it. I actually think in the beginning, the world should have had a lockdown. It would have actually slowed COVID when we could have actually slowed and maybe even killed it. Unfortunately, because of America and many other reasons, we couldn't coordinate a global response to COVID. But yeah, it would have had to been paid. Americans' government, which I don't believe they would have had to pay people to stay home, not through checks or unemployment, literally just backstop the payrolls like Europe did. Just the government pays the payrolls, stay home, watch Netflix. Netflix is free for a month, whatever. That could have actually stopped COVID in its tracks if we kept people away from each other, aside from obviously people who have to be in the hospitals and, you know, crucial services like that. Sounds to me like he was for the lockdown. Well, Jordan, devil's advocate. Well, Jordan, he wised up. He wised up eventually, and then he was anti-lockdown. Okay, if you buy that, then you believe he's seen the light, and now is anti-war after supporting Hillary Clinton 3 times. Again, you can evolve, but I don't understand these people who are like anointing this man as like the COVID czar. He was right about everything. And he is anti-big pharma and anti-lockdown and anti-mandate. I mean, he's basically saying once China lifts his lockdown, everything's going to go to hell. Sounds to me like he's just a slippery politician changing his tune as we go. I'm sure I'll be attacked for this live stream by, the Jimmy Dore sycophants, but let them explain his evolutions on these things. Oh, and by the way, besides the Hillary love, besides the lockdown, being pro-lockdown, certainly seemed to be a big Russiagator too. Certainly seemed to be a big, big Russiagator. And again, broken clock twice a day. This is a tweet thread by Michael Tracy. But let's just show. This is a tweet from RFK, February 16th, 2018. Remember the conservatives' investigator zeal when Joe McCarthy claimed there were a few Russian sympathizers in the State Department compromising our democracy? Whatever happened to those conservatives? What would Joe McCarthy do? Let me repeat. Remember the conservatives' investigator zeal when Joe McCarthy claimed there were a few Russian sympathizers in the State Department compromising our democracy? Whatever happened to those conservatives? WWJMD. What would Joe McCarthy do? Oh boy. Invoking what would good old Joe do? I mean, I wish I was making this stuff up. He also linked to Russian operation hacked a Vermont utility, showing risk to U.S. electrical grid security. So this was that bullshit Washington Post story a few years ago that Russia hacked Vermont's electricity grid. I was consistent from day one, by the way, even when I was at TYT. I said Russiagate was bullshit. I said there was never any evidence that Trump's campaign colluded with the Russian government. I said Trump's campaign couldn't collude with a ham sandwich, much less a hostile foreign nuclear power. But it's interesting that RFK, on one hand, is telling all his followers, don't believe the government, don't believe the science, don't believe this, don't believe this. Yet he just breathlessly believes whatever bullshit the CIA fed them about Russia hacking Vermont's electricity grid. This was the same. Oh, my God. He's basically tweeting out what Rachel Maddow had her hair on fire and MSNBC had their hair on fire and everybody was having a meltdown over at MSNBC and the Washington Post and CNN, the whole Russiagate industrial complex. He also tweeted hours after former special counsel Robert Mueller testified Wednesday that Russians are still meddling in the U.S. political system. Senate Leader Mitch McConnell blocked the advancement of legislation to secure the nation's election system. I don't know. I remember Jimmy Dore saying, if you're a Russiagator, you need to go to the political Hague. Remember? Jimmy and all his little sycophants, Aaron Mate also. All of these people, these anti-Russiagators who have rightly gone after MSNBC and the Washington Post and all these people for feeding us this Russiagate bullshit, I hear nothing from them about RFK being pretty clear Russiagator. Again, it's not a crime. I'm not saying he shouldn't get to debate. If he's at 20%, he belongs on the Democratic debate stage. But where is the intellectual consistency? Why is it that all these anti-lockdown people and anti-Russiagate people and anti-Hillary people, well, RFK will give it, well, we'll look the other way on RFK. He also tweeted how Tillerson changed his tune on Russia and came to court its rulers. Pay for play? In reference to former ExxonMobil Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. I mean, these are just a few. These are just a few on Russiagate. Oh, this one they'll love. Colin, this is further down in that tweet thread, Michael Tracy's tweet thread, him standing in front of the Western Wall in Israel. Can you find that one? RFK pilgrimage to Israel in 2019 and declare the United States is no longer a democracy because of Donald Trump. Wow. I'll tell you. Definitely sounds like who I'd want in terms of Palestinian rights. I could go on and on. The bottom line is, even before getting to the anti-vax stuff, this guy, I think, is pretending to be anti-establishment. He's not for Medicare for all. I don't even know if he would push a public option. He's not for, he's not, as far as I could tell, he's not for massively cutting the military. I haven't heard him put a number that he would push to cut. I think he's good on the environment, which would be better than what we have now, but I don't really think he has a game-changing proposal here. He's not doing anything about money in politics. And Chief, most importantly, and I don't really care who cancels me, and if some of you don't agree, to me it's a non-starter when you forget the COVID vaccine, which a lot of people, had questions about. I don't really have a problem per se with people wanting to take a little longer to get the COVID vaccine, or if you decided not to get it for yourself, obviously, you should have the choice. But this person, long before COVID, is an anti-vaxxer across the board, has pushed rank propaganda that has been debunked time after time after time about COVID. About vaccines, linking to autism, that it causes autism. His stuff, vaccines will give you mercury poisoning. It's been debunked time and time and time again, totally separate from the COVID vaccine. So if you are basically anti-vax across the board, which, by the way, his foundation is making a shit ton of money. You should look at some of the reporting about his children's Is it the Children's Defense Fund? I think that's what it's called. The amount of money they have made in the age of COVID from donations? No. And you could be more than one thing at a time. You could be good on the environment and batshit on other things. You could be good on the environment and kind of a phony on other things. I think he's good on the environment and batshit on science. I think he's good on the environment and kind of just a politician on everything else. I don't buy his anti-crony capitalism shtick. I don't really think he would do dramatically different than a standard Democrat. He is a Kennedy, so I'm not saying you are what your family is, but he comes from privilege and wealth. So somebody asked, who am I supporting? To tell you the truth, I mean, if you put a gun to my head, if I had to vote in the Democratic primary, personally, you do whatever you want. I'm not telling people who to vote for. You put a gun to my head, I would vote for Marianne Williamson. Frankly, I wish there were other options. I think it's wide open. I think other people could jump in. But between Biden, Marianne Williamson, and RFK, I mean, that's not even a close call to me. I would vote for Marianne Williamson. I don't think she's perfect. There's things I don't like. Frankly, I don't think she's running the best campaign. I think she's basically doing what Bernie did, which is putting out what she would do in an aspirational way, trying to run a positive campaign. But she, like Bernie, refuses to punch Biden in the face. She's had opportunities to really go after Biden. And from what I could tell, and from speaking with people on her campaign, she's not interested in aggressively going after Biden on his failures as a president, his abandoning the few campaign promises he made, his rank lies about his civil rights record, his corruption. I said it for Bernie, and I would say it for Marianne, and I would say it for RFK. If you're not willing to aggressively go after Biden for the corruption, aggressively go after Biden for not being what we were fed, not being somebody who could get Republicans to work with him, not being a guy who get things done, abandoning a $15 minimum wage, abandoning a public option, increasing drilling on public land rather than banning it. If you're not willing to actually run against the president aggressively, which would get you coverage because the media will cover conflict, then what are you doing? It's great. Be positive, run a positive campaign, be aspirational. I thought her speech, I didn't see the whole thing, but her new economic Bill of Rights speech is good. But when she's had opportunity to go aggressively against Biden, she doesn't do it. Well, why do we need Bernie different gender then? I hate to be crass, but Bernie would only go so far. And from what I could tell, I'm not saying she doesn't have this skill. I'm not saying she couldn't aggressively go after him, but so far she hasn't. I don't know who's advising her or if she just thinks she'd be better off not aggressively going after Biden. I think Biden is a weak. I thought he was weak in 2020 and could have been beaten. I think he's weaker now. And I think it's the candidate who is willing to borrow a little bit from Donald Trump, not the racism, not the bigotry, not the sexism, not the Islamophobia, but the actual rough talk and talking the talk. I think that candidate is going to rise. I don't think RFK ultimately is going to win the nomination. He might go higher in the polls. I think the DNC might be forced to hold a debate if either of Marianne or RFK, get towards like 25%, because I think it would hurt them in the general. And I think a lot of people would basically say, fuck these people. We're not going to vote in the general because they refuse to hold a primary. So I think that's possible too. All right. I've given you my take. We were going to cover DeSantis versus Trump too, but I forgot that I'm going on the Vanguard soon. So I'm going to skip. I am going on the Vanguard, I think at 3:00 Eastern. So let's jump to calls. Colin, if you could put the number up and I will get the call in going. Host show. We could talk about anything. East Palestine, 2024, the weather, whatever you want. I'm here. Connect. All right. Says share screen. All right. Think I did it right, Colin. Can someone call me to talk about the weather? And don't be shy. Last time it took too long to get our first caller. So I hope we'll get a caller right away. Is it working, Colin?
Yeah, it should be. I'm just taking a sec to get in there as well.
All right. And while we're waiting, reminder, we are 21 members away from hitting our goal for May, which is 125 paid members. If we could hit that goal of 125 paid members, we're going to be in a much better position to possibly go on the road in 2 different places at the same time in June, which would be the first time we've ever done that. So that's statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 to $10 a month. statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 to $10 a month. $5 a month is 16 cents a day. $10 a month is 33 cents a day. All right. Is that you, I see?
Yes, that's me in there right now.
All right. Don't put me to shame, callers. I wouldn't want to call in right now, Robbie Burns says. Why? You want a nude beach or something? Why wouldn't you want to call in right now? All right. Well, if you're at work, I don't know. Call from your desk and pretend it's a work call. He did say he would pardon Julian Assange. That's good. I'm pretty sure Marianne Williamson would do the same based on something she said. Can someone call Jordan to talk about the weather? DNC. And by the way, an interesting thing to me, and I guess RFK wouldn't do it because he's RFK and he's from the Kennedys. Judging by the polls, seems to me that he might even have a better shot running as an independent. He might have a better shot running as an independent because it seems through the polls, he's more popular among independents, moderates, conservatives than he is actual Democrats. So curious why because I piss you off. It's okay, Robbie. As long as you're respectful, we could have a respectful chat. You don't have to be totally, a sycophant. I calls. It asks for a code, Penny said. A code, Colin? Shouldn't ask for a code. I tried to call, but it asked me to enter a code. Can we turn that off, Colin?
That shouldn't be on. Let me see why it's doing.
We'll change it. Hey, Jordan, what are your thoughts on Netanyahu's planning on attacking Iran with the U.S. giving a thumbs up? Is that new? Hasn't Netanyahu basically been planning on attacking Iran for the last 30 years? Or been saying that Iran is going to attack Israel for the last 30 years? You'd have to specify. I don't know if he said something new recently. But, yeah. Netanyahu, everything I know, has been talking about attacking
I updated
Iran.
the number. That should work correctly.
What's that?
I just updated the phone number. It had the wrong phone number.
So we gave you the wrong number. No big deal. Now you have the right number. So try calling it. 719-782-8871. First caller gets, do we have anything to give? Maybe a Status Coup sticker? Sorry, we gave you the wrong number. And I put the wrong number. Oh, here we go. Charles, you're up.
Oh, Charles, RFK.
Hey there.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Well, 2 things. First of all, I wanted to ask you, do you know what happened to Jamal Thomas, Progressive Soapbox? I haven't seen him around or online. Do you know what happened to him? Because since he's in your same community or was?
That's a great question. I used to talk to him a lot. I haven't seen him either. I know that he was on Sputnik, the radio station. He had a show.
Yeah, but that was a year ago. But if you go to his YouTube channel, he hasn't posted anything in 8 months. So I was just curious because I used to watch him
I'll have to shoot him a text. Thanks for, I don't know.
And then the other thing was on RFK Jr. Like, I think you misinterpreted his one tweet about the lockdown. He was looking at it from an environmental perspective. He's basically saying that the lockdown reduced pollution. That's why he was for the lockdown. So I think he misinterpreted that.
I mean, whatever reason he's for it, it could be a good.
Yeah, but I was for it for that reason too. I thought it was stupid from the COVID perspective, but from the environmental perspective, it shutting things down and basically, again, I think he was looking at it from the anti-pollution perspective, not the COVID disease perspective.
Well, I mean, let me read it again. Hold on.
Yeah, I think that's what he
said.
That's what he meant.
Hasn't just slowed COVID-19. He started it by saying the lockdown hasn't just slowed COVID-19. It reduced lethal air pollution. So I don't know. I think you're giving him a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt because he's saying right there the lockdown has slowed COVID-19, which a lot of anti-lockdown people say is bunk. But that's fine if you think. I mean, he probably was happier about the lockdown for the environmental perspective, correct? But it also seems like he thought it was beneficial to slowing COVID down. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was against it just for the pollution thing, and it made things nice and quiet, and it basically let employers because I was always a proponent of working from home. Then now employers let you work from home or it's required, and for stuff like that, I thought it was good. But yeah, and then plus I agree with him on that. And then I do kind of like RFK. I think he's way better. I think people they get too hung up on his vax thing. I think his pros far outweigh his cons. I mean, overall, I really do. I don't like that he's running as a Democrat. That's suspect right there. And you did point out some good tweets that I didn't know about. I'm not sure if they're his positions today,
to me, I'm not really in love with any of them, to be honest with you. But I was just pointing out that to me, on the scales of actual progressivism, I mean, I'm for Medicare for all. That's one of my top issues. So if he's saying, well, I'm for it as a principle, but I don't think it's practical, he's no different than any other standard corporate Democrat. So to me, I would go with Marianne Williamson over him just on that. And then you have the other stuff. I mean, I don't love this. I'm for a free market kind of talk. I'm not down with that. Is he better than Biden on 9 out of 10 things? Absolutely. 100%.
Well, anybody's better than Biden. I'm better than Biden. I mean, I can pick a random person off the street. Oh, also on the Vanguard, you said you're going on the Vanguard. Yeah. It's a shame. I used to really like those guys, and I used to watch their show a lot, but they are biased now. I mean, like, for example, they used to criticize Kyle Kalinske, but then once they had Kyle Kalinske on the show, now they're literally best friends with Kyle Kalinske because they went to his wedding. So, and then they're the same with Marianne Williamson. Every show title now they have is they should just call it the Marianne Williamson Show. That's all they, Marianne Williamson, Crystal Ball, and they are influenced. They try to pretend they're not.
I can't speak for them, but I think they're kind of I view them as they call it like they see it. I think they have criticized Kyle before, and I think they've criticized most of the people that you're saying they credit all the time. They're clearly for Marianne over the alternatives. But I think, I generally think that they do a good job of both giving criticism and, crediting people when they think they should be credited.
Yeah, but Kyle, that's a very good example. They criticized him, but once he was on the show, they haven't criticized him since. Does that mean he's been perfect since then? And I'm just using him as an example. Same with Marianne Williamson, same with Crystal Ball, and so on. I mean, they were hard on Kyle, but again, literally they're best friends with him now because But yeah, I just, and again, it's almost sickening to listen to him. I used to really like him, and then
why I kind of respect them is because a lot of channels like them, if you watch them in the beginning, they were kind of doing what a lot of these other channels did, which is basically just suck Jimmy Dore off to try and get Jimmy Dore's audience. And there's a lot of those channels, and I think we know who they are. And they were doing that in the beginning, and they were growing because of it. But they decided, based on the fact that Jimmy was clearly pandering to the right wing, Jimmy was clearly, I mean, I don't even think it's up for debate, overnight suddenly became a COVID skeptic or a vaccine skeptic, and his views and everything took off. I don't think that was by accident. And to me, it says a lot about people when they know that it's either going to lose them viewers or just stall them out in terms of growth when they put their real feelings forward rather than just continually sucking somebody off. Whereas these other channels, they will not criticize Jimmy Dore under any circumstance. They will not criticize. They will not criticize Jimmy Dore if he, I don't want to be, if he shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue, they'll ignore it, borrowing from the truth.
No, I understand.
So,
Here's another quick example. Like they're criticizing Jimmy Dore on their last show because he was promoting a product. Sam Cedar promotes products. They don't criticize Sam Cedar for doing the same damn thing. There's another good example.
All right. Well, do you really want to spend 15 minutes talking about the Vanguard?
No, that's fine. But I said you were going on your show. I figured. But yeah, I understand. Sure.
I also don't think like the Vanguard, I think they would admit this. Like they're not exactly, I don't think anyone's looking at them for like hardcore journalism per se. I think people go to them for like entertainment and like drama, So
I did too, but they just seem too biased. Like once they have somebody on their show, at least Jimmy Dore, once he has somebody on their show, he's not like he kind of remind me like Nico House. Remember after Nico House had on Tulsi Gabbard? Dude, I'm
in a good mood. Don't mention that guy's name to me. Ugh.
Yeah, that's just what it reminded me of. Yeah, I understand. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you get on to the next call. I understand.
Thank you, sir. And by the way, welcome new member Penny just signed up. So now we're at 105 new members this month. 20 members away from our goal. 20 members away from hitting 125 new members for the month. Super, super exciting. Let's keep it going. All right. Let's go. I don't see a name. It just says unknown. But you wanted to talk about Fox?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Sure.
First time calling into your show. And I've been watching. I've been watching your content passively. I want to say since about a year ago or so. And I like to watch things from across the different political. I mean, I'm 1 minute I'm watching you guys, the next minute I'm watching and calling in a Jesse Lee Peterson. You know what I'm saying? So like I identify as a left of center, but you see, when I first registered to vote, I registered as a Democrat because most of my social policies are pretty left-leaning. But I realized that right around, and probably a lot of people might have made this observation as well, that right around 2015 or 16 or so, there seems to have been like a paradigm shift in social policies and what is considered conservative and what is considered liberal. Now, some of them stayed where they were, such as, gun control seems to be considered a right-wing social policy. Mm-hmm. But when the heck did free speech become a conservative social policy? Now, I'm not sure.
I kind of think that's bullshit, by the way, but go on. I don't think the Republican Party gives a damn about free speech. I think you're right that liberals have become antagonists to free speech, but I think it's a lie when people try to push, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world try to push that. Oh, it's the Republican Party that cares so much about free speech. They don't give a flying fuck about free speech. But go ahead.
Well, kind of. I have to agree with you there because that's kind of like the environmentalism thing, which, like environmentalism, that's a green social policy, But the I heard you say corporate Democrat earlier. I love that term. I've been calling them establishment leftists. Mm-hmm. But I like corporate Democrat. I'm going to remember that one. But they latched on to the environmentalism thing and the social justice thing. Like, oh, this is ours. We own this. This is our social policy. No. That was a green social policy long before it was a left social policy.
Right.
They like have proprietary ownership over environmentalism now. So perhaps when I retract that, saying that free speech became a conservative social policy, it's not so much that it became one, it's just that with the push that against free speech from corporate Democrats or the establishment left, some right-wingers have tried to latch on to that. You know, like, oh, no, all free speech, you know. Left or right, same dude in different piles. You know, like, and I guess what I wanted to ask you was just that. Do you feel like, so I don't feel like my social policies really changed. I just feel like the left became more radicalized, pushing me further.
Well, I guess you'd have to specify certain social policies that you think the left have latched onto that you think are too extreme for you.
Ones that are too extreme, possibly social justice. That's one that, you know, like, I believe marginalized people should be represented better. But when it gets to a point where you suppress other people, that's not so good. You know, like, I'm all about the equality. I'm all about that. But it's got to be equality, not hampering or hindering a demographic just to uplift the other. Why not just uplift the marginalized demographic? Why do you have to hamper the other one, you know?
Right. Well, I think there's different definitions, right? So I have the benefit of having been on the road for the last 8 years, less so the last couple months because, you know, we had our first child. But I could say I think that the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, particularly on police brutality, which I call police terrorism, is right on the spot. And it's a shame that all that momentum that happened after George Floyd and other things has really dissipated. However, sometimes I think it could go a little too far, per se, when, you know, I have been criticized by some people in the BLM movement over, well, you're white, so you can't speak, you know? And I just thought to myself, you're in a tough position as a white person then, because you don't want to offend anybody. But then again, like, why can't I have an opinion on something just because I'm white, you know? So I do think any social justice movement, it does have the potential in some cases of going too far. Same thing, you know, with Me Too, who I'm very supportive of the Me Too movement. I was tarred and I was tarred and feathered. I was falsely accused many years ago. And fortunately, most people who looked at it, you know, realized it wasn't true. But yeah, I mean, clearly people who rape people or sexually harass or abuse power dynamics should be called out. But then, you know, I was in circumstances where people were, you know, a guy made a bad joke and I heard a woman saying, oh, that's toxic masculinity. And I was just like, like, you know, some of this can go a little far. There's been situations where I remember I was covering something and everybody had to go in a circle and give their pronouns. I'm for respecting people and calling them by what they asked to be called by, whether that has to do with transgender or if your name is David, but you'd rather be called Dave, you know, like I just say respect people and what they want to be called for. But you don't also have to push it on other people who might not want to introduce themselves in that way because they wanted me to introduce my pronouns. And I was like, are we really spending 10 minutes on this? So I do, I do think that certain social justice movements can go too far, but that let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Cause like I support Black Lives Matter. I support the core of what Me Too was about. But there's also grifts in all of them. We've seen in Black Lives Matter, some of these leaders have somehow bought like 3 mansions and money. We don't know where the money is going. So definitely agree with you that, you know, social justice is a good thing, but it has to stay focused on the core issue, not go sideways onto all these other things.
Now you mentioned pronouns earlier, and that's another thing that I'd like to talk about. It's their body, their choice. Okay, that's fine. It's their life, their choice. Their body, their choice. Okay, I appreciate that. However, why must one take a knee to someone's pronouns? Where is the line in the sand drawn? It's my mind, my choice. And if I see someone who identifies as a woman but's got the 5 o'clock shadow and the bulge, I'm going to view that as a man, and you can't change my mind. But I get called transphobic.
When you say you're going to view that as a man, what exactly are you bothered by? The fact that you're criticized?
The fact that I am commanded to take a knee to their precious pronouns.
Okay.
And then I am ostracized and lambasted because I have an opinion.
Because you have a what?
An opinion. I have a perspective. I have a view. I look at that person. I go, that is a man. That is not a woman. But I have to take that knee to their precious pronouns. Yeah. Oh, how dare you? That's transphobia. And also the term transphobia invalidates true phobia.
I don't really view it that way, though.
Real phobias are scary.
I don't really view it.
I'm sorry.
I don't really view it that way, though. I mean, I don't really think anyone's demanding you take a knee, but it just goes back to the basic respect. You know, for example, I think the older generation in particular, I don't know how old you are, so I'm not saying you're old, but the older generation in particular obviously is not in sync with, you know, pronouns and transgenderism, and they would have a hard time understanding it. That's why so many parents, you know, when their kids come out as transgender or this and that, kick them out of the house, you know, or something like that. But to me, it's not about taking a knee. How does it affect my life? Whether I personally look at someone who has transitioned to a woman and I personally have a hard time, like you're saying, I personally have a hard time accepting that or approving of that. But how does it affect me just to be respectful and call them by their, you know, desired name? Or, I mean, there's bigger problems in the world. And I think that's been, not that I'm not calling you a right winger, but I think that's been the success of the Republican Party and right-wing media in making this a bigger issue than it is, in order to distract their base from the fact that they're actually being fucked economically by those very same right-wingers and those very same right-wing media figures. To me, there's so much bigger things in the world than if Billy transitioned to Lily. I'm just using Lily because that's my daughter's name.
Right.
And whether I personally approve of that or whether I find it strange or unnatural, the bottom line is, just out of human respect, it doesn't affect me, and I'm going to call that person Lily if I have an encounter with her. So that's how I view it. I personally, it doesn't bother me because to me, my view in the world is be who you are, be who you feel you are. Now, I think there are lines. Do I think that 8 to 10-year-olds should be transitioning?
Oh, no.
No, I don't. Do I think that sometimes teenagers go through phases? Yes, I do. I don't think anyone, whether you are 8 years old or 28 years old, should just decide one night, I'm going to go get surgery and transition tomorrow. I think there should be a process. I think they should consult with medical professionals, their family, really think about it. But if that is who you feel that you are, if that is who maybe you have felt that way dating back to your childhood. If you were born a man, you might have always felt like you are more a female. Then it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect you. And if it's what's going to make them happy, then Godspeed. So there we might disagree, because I don't think anyone's asking anyone to bow down. I just think people are saying, mind your own fucking business and respect other people's choices. And to me, that is the skill in the right wing's grift. That is the skill in the right wing's total gaslighting of America. They have made so many people believe that the transgender topic and drag queen shows is like a top issue in America. You know what the top issue in America is? The 40-year bank robbery of your money and my money going to these same fuckheads. Not if
Yeah.
not if a drag queen is reading Huckleberry Finn to a 10-year-old. You might not like it. Okay, then don't fucking bring your kids to that event. But it's crazy to me that these same people who are all about parental rights down in Florida and the parents get to decide what's taught in school, they want to dictate to other parents whether they could bring their kids to a book event that a drag queen happens to be at. Mind your own fucking business across the board. How about that? Sorry, but I got to take the next.
Yeah.
I got to take the next caller because I'm only on for another 10 minutes. Colin.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Status Coup. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I just real quick jump in and clarify real quick because you had mentioned it that the things you mentioned about transitioning is already in place, and across teens and adults of people who transition, less than 1% express regret for transitioning, which is lower than hip replacement, knee replacement, all that stuff. It's
And by the way, can I just say, Colin, all this concern by Tim Pool and Matt Walsh and Ted Cruz and all these right wingers, we're mutilating children, we're doing this to children. 20 of them get mowed down in a school. Thoughts and prayers.
well,
Thoughts and
and
prayers.
and they're also all fine with circumcision and all that, which is mutilating
Right,
children
but
without their
wait a
consent.
minute. You care so much about these children that are being mutilated and their lives are being destroyed, but when they're all being gunned down all across America, well, we can't do anything. Get the fuck out of here. Excuse my French. All right, next one. Edward.
Yes, I was just wondering if you thought it would do the RFK Jr. campaign any good if he got together with Tulsi Gabbard and ran a campaign with him as the primary presidential candidate and Tulsi as the vice presidential candidate. Would that cause his campaign to pick up?
In a Democratic primary? Hell no.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
I was just going to say that basically that's about the only ticket I can imagine voting for right now is RFK and Tulsi Gabbard because they're like about the only two people I'm trusting right now.
You're trusting them on what issue in particular?
Well, I think they're more or less truthful. I trust Tulsi when it comes to foreign policy, getting us out of foreign wars. Tulsi isn't going to get us into a nuclear war, and she's going to try to work to de-escalate tensions with Russia. And I'm pretty sure RFK is committed to the same thing. And as far as her views on trans, I totally agree with her views on trans issues. That doesn't bother me at all. And she's right on gun issues as well, as far as I'm concerned. So to me, they're the perfect ticket.
You're definitely a lot further to the right than I am, which is fine. That's cool.
But the thing is, I would sort of like to be able to vote Democrat in 2024 because I haven't been able to do so since 1988. The last Democrat I voted for was Michael Dukakis.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, every single person I put up was a creep on the Democrat side without exception. And I've been voting a third party ever since. And I'll guarantee you one thing for sure: I will be voting for someone who's against war, who's against sending my tax money to Ukraine, who's against sending my tax money to Israel to throw Palestinians out of their homes.
Well, I'm pretty sure RFK is not against
for
that.
Medicare for all as well.
I'm pretty sure RFK is not against throwing Palestinians out of their homes because he, for everything I could tell, is pretty lockstep with Israel. He's not for Medicare for all either. Neither is Tulsi. When she ran in 2020, she said she was closer to the Australian plan, which is not Medicare for all. To me, I don't trust Tulsi Gabbard. I have to take the loss on Tulsi Gabbard because I think I was kind of conned like many others on the left. She has dramatically, like overnight, shifted to the right. Now, if you are more conservative, then that's fine to support Tulsi. But she presented herself as a leftist, anti-war, accepting of all kinds. And then after she, got screwed in 2020, I mean, overnight, she basically became a culture warrior, trying out for Fox News. I don't agree with her on transgender issues whatsoever. She also, if you do the research, came up in a bit of a cult in her childhood, which I think affects her views. I think she has dangerous views on, LGBTQ issues, transgender issues. I don't actually believe she's anti-war like you think she's anti-war. She says, I'm anti-regime change wars. That's key. She says, I'm anti-wars with the goal of basically changing the leader. She was for Afghanistan. She was for the Iraq war. She's still, as far as I know, a reserve she was in the Horn of Africa, I think a year ago, with the military. She is totally fine with drone attacks, which I'm not for. I'm with you. I'd like to see this Russia-Ukraine conflict end. I don't think we should be sending them F-16 planes and all this shit. I'd like to see a lot more money spent here in America than in Ukraine. But I don't think she is genuinely against all war. And I also think
I don't actually
she should be talking also about the economic war we're fighting, because we have when she was in Congress, she said we should sanction Russia more and we should sanction these countries more, which is basically economic war and is killing a lot of people in Venezuela, Iran, Russia are sanctions. So, yeah.
Well, I'm not actually a conservative either. I think Donald Trump is clearly a con man. And
amen.
I don't understand the support for Donald Trump. It makes no sense to me. Ron DeSantis is in some ways better, but in some ways worse because he's wanting to invade Iran, and to me that's crazy. The idea of invading Iran is just nuts.
Don't forget China.
And so I can't go Republican either. So maybe Libertarian, maybe Green Party, like I did last time with Howie Hawkins.
Well, I am not telling you to vote for, but you said you're for Medicare for all. The only candidate that I know of running that's for Medicare for all is Marianne Williamson. The problem with her is I don't think she's been particularly strong on Russia, Ukraine. So, yeah.
My problem, I'll tell you my problem. You might have a problem with this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My problem with Marianne Williamson is that she says she's for reparations for blacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be fine and dandy, but I've never heard her say a damn thing about reparations for Palestinians who've been displaced by my tax money. I don't feel that guilty about blacks, but I do feel guilty that my tax money has been going to Israel to throw Palestinians off of their land and out of their homes. And I think there needs to be reparations for that. And why isn't she calling? And because there are people right now who've been affected by this atrocity who deserve reparations, and I haven't heard her say a word. So until she explains that to me, I just have no use for her whatsoever.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair point. I'm 100% for reparations for Black Americans. But I think it's fair to ask a presidential candidate, would you be for shifting the balance and sending aid and whatever you want to call it, reparations to people in Gaza and Palestinians and see what she says? I think that's totally fair. I'd be for that. 100%.
Okay, well, thanks. Anyway, I just thought I'd express myself, and have a good day.
Have a good one. Appreciate it. Jesse, you're up.
Hi.
Hey there.
I'm sorry. I was just writing some things down and let me get myself together. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and the things you have said. I found you first with the Young Turks. I abhor them. And you were the only reason I ever paid attention, and I lost you, and I found you again, and it's been amazing.
I'm glad
So
I'm
thank
glad
you
we found
for
each other. I'm
everything.
glad we found each other again.
I have a long story, and you have not a lot of time. I've been on Medicaid since I was 10 years old. I suffered a lot of medical problems throughout my life, which was because of desperate poverty and poor water. So I appreciate your interest in East Palestine and the damage that's going on there. When I think about the things that you've talked about, the Medicaid for All is very important. I live in Billings, Montana right now. I was born here. I know intimately about Libby.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a backhanded joke. You're a bad kid. Well, I'll send you to go play in the Libby Park.
Right.
It's, you know.
And it was very interesting to me because last year I tried to organize a trip to Libby, Montana to cover, Medicare for All and how they got Medicare after their asbestos crisis. And interestingly enough, like it was the first story I've encountered that really nobody wanted to talk. The people.
No, it is so suppressed, and there is so much money transferring hands to make sure that it stays oppressed. Medicaid for All is a wonderful idea, and I love it. I think everyone should have free health care and shouldn't have to worry about if, 2 weeks of not being able to eat properly is going to be the thing that causes them to be sick for the next 8 months,
right.
Then subsequently adding on to years and years and years. So food and healthcare are the one thing that every human should know they have the access to. Housing is something, like turtles grow a shell. People have to figure it out, but it shouldn't be something kept away from people because, your caste system is so low, you're unable to obtain it. Also, the one thing that I really appreciate is that you titled yourself Status Coup, because I've always had a problem with the status quo. I would suggest that you stop suggesting that there's a problem with economic disparity and start recognizing that it wasn't a mistake for us to be labeling the indigenous people here Indians. It was an exact, direct quote and statement to declare that it was suggested we were to be the new caste system. Because it's not a class system, it's a caste.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're born poor or you die rich. That's it. The Medicaid for All it's a payout. I've been on dialysis since I was 10 years old.
Wow.
I have personally witnessed the fact, I'm 38 now. I've been on dialysis for 26 years of my life. I don't know what you accomplished by the time you were 26, and excuse my French and my nomenclature, I wasn't even allowed to pop out a cunt turd to have my own family.
Wow.
I've been refused to have a stable place to live, a stable existence since I was 16 months old. And I came down with nephrotic syndrome. First patient ever diagnosed in Billings, in Montana. Not a high achievement, but an achievement. And they have kept me held in stasis as the new form of human chattel. I am a terminal patient. I have never been allowed to escape this in my life. I had a transplant for 2 years because my dad didn't want to deal with having a sick child. And everyone told him, well, give her a kidney and she won't be sick anymore. No, I was still sick. I was on drugs every goddamn day, 15 to 40 pills a day. And because I was a child left alone with a bottle of pills and a wad of cash and an empty house, that transplant didn't last me more than 2 years. I ended up back on dialysis when I was 17. I
Can I ask
have
you?
been there ever since.
Can I ask you? You said you had been on dialysis since 10. Did you have like a liver failure, or what was going on?
Kidney failure. I can give you the synopsis of my condition. I've gotten it down to about 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
Maybe less. I was diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome when I was 16 months old through a series of unfortunate events, criminal neglect, medical malpractice, and desperate poverty. I suffered with nephrotic syndrome until I was 8 years old. I started going through congestive heart failure. Congestive heart failure eventually took my life, subsequently leading to my DOA, dead on arrival, when I was 10 years old. I spent 3 months in a morphine-induced coma, second highest morphine suppression coma they had out of any patient at that time, including adults. And I fought my way out of my coma and woke up 3 months later on dialysis.
Wow. Well,
and then I went through foster care and all sorts of shit like that. But I would love to talk to you again.
I'd love to have you on. I'd love to have you on camera if you're willing. I mean, this story is unbelievable. I'm so sorry for everything you've dealt with.
100%.
At the same time,
100%.
You must have a lot of strength, because that probably would have ended a lot of people's lives, whether by death or some others, choosing other means. But you must be incredibly strong to persevere through all that.
Strength isn't a blessing; it's a curse. It is. It really is. And I like to think of myself as a very creative masochist. And obviously I wasn't happy with just drug smoking and, illicit behavior. So I had to go for something a little stronger, like, a morphine addiction when you're 10 years old.
Good God. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you have any family support or friends in the local community to help you now?
I have one human being that is like I call her my hetero life mate. And again, that's kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's like, my life's shit and I'm sorry, I'm going to hold on to you until I'm gone. But she's been my whole life support for a very long time.
Wow.
And aside from her, I have family, but they don't really have the ability, or the ones who do have ability don't have the connection or want.
Gotcha. Yeah. Reach out to me. info@statuscoup.com. Just put in the subject line.
I will.
Caller. And we could definitely do an interview. I'd like to hear more.
Okay.
I've also always wanted to go to Montana. I hear it's beautiful, besides the corruption.
It is gorgeous. The corruption is insidious, but it's gorgeous. And I tell everybody this is the last best place in American earth you can find. And it is being just dismantled and taken apart. The predatory rental companies have turned it into a hellscape. It is impossible for me to find a better place to live or to sustain the place that I live without starving and going without medications.
Unbelievable.
I have the option of going homeless for 3 months and not spending a single penny. Literally, I couldn't spend a single penny of my SSI, which is the only way I live, food stamps and SSI. I don't even qualify for Section 8 because of the requirements they have and the checkout times. They schedule it in ways that they know people are unable to qualify for unless you have a sister, an auntie, or a cousin who's already nepotistically milking the system for the people that they care about.
Right.
And, I hate to fault those people who are also in desperate need, but there has to be a point when, I care for myself and I care for my family, but those means of self-care are only going to be enough to keep 2 people alive. that won't help any third or fourth person along. And, it's kind of like ants have to float together on a raft.
Right.
They share oxygen with the ones that are underneath so they don't drown. But this whole, we can't all survive, someone has to die at my expense is becoming infuriating to me. And I didn't want to say anything too controversial, but I'm going to throw it out there. There's one other human that I assimilate with, and he's been rightfully judged as a horrible person, but he was surviving in means that no one had any understanding of, and that's Osama bin Laden. He started dialysis when he was 15 years old.
Right.
And, that's really fucking depressing and sick that that's the only person that I can look towards as some kind of role model. Like, what the fuck has this country thought of the humans that that's what they want me to turn into?
Yeah. And they've left people like you.
I mean, him or Gary Coleman.
Yeah. And they've left people like you to basically fend for themselves and slowly die and fuck off, basically.
I mean, it's god awful.
Yeah.
My brother has suffered with mental illness his entire life, and no one could do a damn thing to help him because, just one of God's unfortunates, right?
Right. Listen, I unfortunately have to go because I'm going on another show, but please email me. I'd like to interview you.
I will. It will be unlegible. I'm
it's okay.
Uneducated and illiterate, so I will do my best to make, text to speech, make it sensible.
That's my
Thank you for everything you do.
That's my favorite kind of email to read, so don't worry about that. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, and have a good interview.
You too. We'll do we will do a longer call next time, maybe for 2 hours. I totally forgot that I was going on this show. But yeah, I love talking to people, even people that don't agree with me. Even people that don't agree. It's fun as long as we could kind of not talk over each other and, have a shouting match. We don't have to all agree. Thank you, everybody. Coming up at 5 o'clock Eastern. Don't go anywhere. 5 o'clock Eastern. Tina Desiree Berg will be hosting. Boy, quite the show. She has some dark money leaks. She's got some information and new reporting on the dark money machine doubling down. Wait for it. On child labor and white nationalism. So Tina will be live at 5 o'clock Eastern, breaking and reporting new information on the dark money machine trying to get your children to work so that they don't have to pay adults actual wages. Can't wait. 5 o'clock Eastern. Reminder, please sign up. StatusCoup.com/join. We're 20 members away. 20 members away from hitting our goal of 125 for the month. StatusCoup.com/join. We've had a couple of expenses the last week or two, including $15,000 for a brand new live view. So if it's within your means to join us, support our on the ground and investigative reporting, StatusCoup.com/join, StatusCoup.com/join. Sign up for $5 to $10 a month. I would love to hit our goal for May of 125 paid members. We don't take any money from the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. Our funding is from you. Come back at 5 o'clock Eastern for Tina. I'm jumping on the Vanguard. I'll be joining them in a minute. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody. Super chats too. Tony, $2. RFK has only been a district attorney, so pass. Caitlin, $5. The suspected company whose vinyl chloride is believed to be the train cars in EP revised the MSDS the day after the burn. MSDS. I wish I knew what that's. The manifest? Caitlin, please email me what you're talking about here, because I've been looking into the manifest.
Material safety data sheet.
Look at you, Colin, with the knowledge. Can you email me this info, whatever you got on this? info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. Put in the subject line, company that owned the vinyl chloride cars. info@statuscoup.com. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Crystal, $4.99, super sticker. Appreciate it. Penny signed up as a new YouTube member. Welcome, Penny. Really, really appreciate it. Also, welcome Melissa, signed up to our website. And Cyber Hobbit, $10. Hey, now, some women can grow beards better than men, and some men grow boobies. Who cares? Let people be people. That's what I say. Let people be people. A man transitioning to a woman because that is who she feels she is has zero effect on my life. And I just believe let people do whatever it takes within the law to be happy. The right wing has brainwashed us all to think this is an important thing and this is somehow a threat to your life and society. It's not. And by the way, drag queens and transgenderism has been around for centuries. It's not a new thing. All right. Thanks, everybody. Come back at 5 o'clock Eastern for Tina Desiree Berg. Peace.